I love the I love and we're live now, but I love the awkward kind of like, is it live? Is it live? Looking around face that we have when we start these meetings is pretty great. Okay, so welcome to the Package Team Weekly Retro for the 19th for us and 20th for you, Gigi. Um, do you, just a reminder before we start off in these meetings, if the person following your entries is not attending the meeting, just start reading there straight away, so that we're not sort of question marking around that, if that's cool with everyone. But otherwise, go ahead, Gigi.
Okay. So for me, I missed some deliverables for 12.3. Had a bunch of merge requests sitting there, couldn't make much progress. I think the biggest takeaway for me from that was like who to look for the merge reviews. So the tips I got was to try to find someone on your time zone to help you review, to avoid the kind of like a back and forth from like one day to the next, where you have to wait a whole day and then you see the comments and then you do some work and then you wait another whole day. If you can find someone in your time zone, you can do like a back and forth much quicker. And the other thing is to maybe find the domain expert to review, because it can happen the situation as well, like where you get a whole review and then at the end of the review you get pointed to like an expert on that field, and then there's another whole review and then you start the whole thing over, right? So the takeaway, I guess, to be wiser who to select to see your review, see your merge request. I'm not familiar with the initials. Let's say, is it you, Steve?
Yeah, I was just kind of echoing that I've also been a little uncertain of like when it's sort of appropriate or not appropriate to involve domain experts on the reviews versus just kind of going with the roulette. Especially since from looking at the stuff that we're building on, the container registry and the package registries, there's the two experts are going to be Camille and Dimitri, because they're the two that built those systems for the most part, and certainly don't want to overload them with reviewing all of our stuff until we become the domain experts. But that's something I've thought of. I'm not sure if there's anything else to discuss at the moment there, but
yeah, I think for one of my merge requests, specifically was very helpful to involve Camille, because it was very technical. I think if you were just building like a more general feature, maybe it doesn't matter so much. But I think for that specific MR, I think it mattered a lot. So I think depending on the nature of what you're doing, it might be better to just involve the domain expert, in this case, Camille or Dimitri for us.
Yeah, so the one thing I would add here is, and we're all relatively new, like a lot of people are, and so as we're learning these things, we could start providing assistance to each other, and that's kind of the idea around bouncing an issue back and forth between you each, and then sort of as you each sort of get more experience across the whole code base that we're covering, you should be able to support each other a bit better with some of that kind of like, oh, maybe this, and then you should only have that kind of higher level review. And on that note, definitely what you're both working towards being reviewers in code bases, if you're not working towards that already, because that will be totally helpful. Yeah, cool.
Sure.
Thank you, Gigi. Thanks, Steve. Do you want to read for John?
Oh,
Gigi,
yeah. Oh.
Go ahead, Gigi, you do it.
Okay. Front-end grooming for 12.4 was completed later than expected. Access requests are taking a bit of time to complete. I know everyone's super busy, but wanted to mention. Over to you, Steve, again.
For me, it was a bummer that Conan didn't make 12.3, as that was sort of my main deliverable I'd been working on. And then also splitting Conan up has been very helpful in getting these reviews to go a little bit more smoothly and get a bit more thorough feedback. But it's kind of also started to get difficult to keep track of them. And since everything's in a split up phase at the moment, it's difficult to continue to test like the full functionality. I have to like put a lot of pieces back together again to get to that. Over to Dan.
Yeah, I think that's like, this is one of those trade-offs. I know we've talked about it a couple of times of sort of splitting things up. But I think there's some sort of trade-off inside the review process. It might make sense to like do an MR and do small chunks and then have those reviewed and then put them together as like a bigger MR to do a review that's already pretty clean.
And that's kind of what I'm doing is I have, instead of multiple MRs going to master because they all build on one another, I have one MR that goes to master, another MR that goes into that one, and another one that goes into that one. So it's a chain of MRs. And I'm kind of like, if I throw one into review, I'll ask and say, please don't merge this one until the other one is merged, and I'll let you know when that happens. And it's working pretty well. I think that I've seen a few other people that have suggested doing that method, but usually it's only one or two in a row, whereas my chain is getting longer.
Have you looked at merge trains for this type of thing? Is this something that would be helpful?
I don't know. I haven't looked into that.
Yeah, that's the release team that's been working on merge trains for a while. It might be worth like grabbing a coffee chat with someone on the release team to sort of ask them about what that does. And I forget where it's. I'm pretty confident it's already released. But I don't know what stage the release is in, whether it's MVC and whether it's going to be super helpful right now, but it might be something worth looking at because it sounds the way you're describing it, that really matches exactly what you're talking about right there, Steve, where you have one thing has to depend on the next thing. So cool. Yeah, the suggestion would be to set up a coffee chat with one of the backend engineering team from release.
I will definitely do that.
Cool. Yeah, for me, missed deliverables isn't ideal. But we're learning from this and can improve next time. I think my desire would be to reduce our overall commitment in terms of issues, but I think the issue weighting will help. And, we missed a few deliverables this time. I think it's worthwhile recognizing this as a learning process for everyone. So don't be too like down on yourself, too like focused on, I got to work longer hours or whatever to try and complete the stuff. If we've overcommitted, that's really on myself and maybe Tim to some extent, but that's really my job to sort of iron that out and say, hey, this is too much. So at some level, what I want to do is like, whether it's asynchronously or synchronously, we'll do a retro on the milestone to try and work out where that came from. Because some things were just too many, we didn't start them. Some things, maybe if we had an estimate, it would have been helpful because we would have known this would take longer. Some things were, we got this review process, like Gigi, you mentioned you had a review, and I looked at that, I was watching that review, and it was like, here's a bunch of changes, and you work through it, and then Camille came along and went, hey, you should change all these things too, and you're like, ooh, gotta start again.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was pretty much like a kind of a restart on that one.
Yeah, and I saw that, and and I think the thing to be aware of there is like, some of the delays you experience certainly come from the time zone factor. But some of it will also come from, you're pretty new here and these are your first several MRs. So there's some GitLab-y things you're probably learning as well. So try not to be too unfair on yourself for having to learn those things, but also try not to be making that same mistake twice of like whatever it is, the feedback you got from the first reviewer, because that'll just speed it up.
Yeah. No, for sure. It was a big learning experience for sure.
Yeah, learning is fun. Anyway, and then I haven't scheduled the retro yet, but I will. I just need to get that figured out and put it on the calendar for everyone. And then the second one I have is I've been actually having trouble filling out my daily stand-up. I'm very busy, and I actually during the day I'm feeling really productive and I'm actually getting things done and I'm pretty stoked about it. And then I go, yes, I've had a great day. I've worked well and I've got all these things finished. And then I get to the next day and I'm like, I just did meetings, didn't I? What did I actually do? And I just need to write things down and what I do, and or come up with a better strategy for recording them. I do feel like I want to simplify our stand-up questions a little more, just because I feel like what did I accomplish yesterday and do I have any successes? To me, they feel quite similar, but I don't know if that's true for other people. So I don't want to change that just to reflect how I feel about it. I'd like to get people's feedback on the stand-up questions. So maybe this is not the right forum, but if I don't know if people feel like this is worth an issue in our team board or just a chat in Slack, or what format would be best for people there. But really just trying to figure out whether we should iterate on our stand-up questions or not.
I would.
I had got that impression from your stand-ups, Gigi, that you were just like, some of these questions are like.
Oh, there are some questions that don't make sense for me. Like, why am I asking every day what I did? Like something about the week. Like, yeah. I don't know. I would rather have that asked on Friday or something. Like, I
think I would agree with that. Like, because some days I'm like, oh, Netflix again.
It's too much pressure, like to accomplish something interesting every day. Like,
well, but I mean,
I don't have such a cool life.
You can skip the question. Like, I think maybe, I don't know whether we want to think about iterating towards what release team did, which is to sort of separate their stand-ups into different elements. And we're all we're also trying different things of like random questions. So it's not always the same question, stuff like that. Just different ways to make it a little less mechanical and a little more sort of organic. So what do you all feel like would be a good place to discuss that?
I can create an issue, put some suggestions there.
Yeah, I think an issue would be good.
Do you feel comfortable creating that issue, Gigi, or do you want?
Yeah, I can. I just don't know where exactly.
Yeah, I'll link you to that.
You can link the project.
Yeah, I'll put an action item in the document when I get a second, because I'm going to read John's now if we're good talking about this. So John's, this is in what went well. John says Nico's onboarding is nearly completed. He also says great chats with Dan, Tim, and Nick regarding 12.4 front-end deliverables, which is good. And over to you, Steve. You're totally muted though.
So a few things. I decided to start using RubyMine and was very surprised and delighted by its testing shortcuts and debugging capabilities. It's actually been working really well so far and been kind of providing me information that I've previously did not easily find. So I'll continue to try to stick with it and see if it works. But there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts to relearn, and that was the main thing that kept me from wanting to try it. I grabbed a bite to eat with Jeremy Jackson from the growth team yesterday, and we just had a nice chat. It was nice to meet up with another engineer. I think the other day I had co-worked in Denver. It was mostly sales and maybe some product. And then a preemptive good thing for this week is I'm going to have met Dan in real life. He exists. At least we'll find that out tomorrow. And last, there was a community contribution to the NPM docs. And it was just really kind of awesome to first help him understand the problem that he was facing and then see his way through making updates to the docs. Back to you, Dan.
Yeah, I was just saying, well, I was totally muted because I did it myself. I was saying that's because I'm in Colorado right now. But anyway, that's going to be exciting. I should have put that in here too. Sorry. So I should say cohesion here, not continuity. Team cohesion is pretty great right now. I feel like everyone sort of echoed this in our async retro, sort of saying how we all feel like the team's sort of starting to get a bit of momentum. And I feel like that will continue to improve as long as we keep sort of, recognizing where we can improve, and that's an opportunity to just do stuff better and not a criticism of anyone in particular. So definitely keen to keep improving where we can. More clear expectation on due dates for MRs in a milestone is also good value. So there was a conversation that Steve linked. Thank you for linking that, Steve, in the package channel around when will a merged issue, or when will a merged MR actually end up in the milestone? If it's the whole of the 17th, or is it leading up to the 17th? Which time zone of the 17th, etc. So I thought that was really good value. I think Gigi and I were chatting the other day about some virtual coffee chats that Gigi was doing, and one of the things that Gigi mentioned was doing a coffee chat with the person who's reviewing or the maintainer that's reviewing your code. When you use reviewer roulette, that can be really cool, like a really cool idea to sort of get a sense of where that person's at, and an opportunity to have a good conversation about it. So I think that's an awesome idea, Gigi. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it was pretty helpful for me.
Yeah, awesome. Nice one. And over to you, Gigi.
So my delete tag merge request has been merged yesterday after a very lengthy, almost 3 months, I guess. Yeah, that was really good. There's a few issues to follow up, but shouldn't be anything too difficult or complicated. Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Cool. And I added the link there for you to where to create the issue we mentioned earlier. So that's
cool. So on the package stage, yeah, I'll do that.
Cool. And just to point of reference for that area, for people who can get to this doc, i.e. people who are actually kind of in the team, we really are using that as a place for us to sort of discuss things before we make a decision and give people a bit of a feeling of safety that, you can say whatever you want and not everyone in the world can see it, which is, but I do intend the things that come out of that will end up on our team page type thing. So if we make a decision about waiting or whatever, that's why we made that change in our team page. So trying to balance, I'm a huge advocate for transparency myself, but I recognize that for some people, sort of thinking that everyone in the world can come and look at an issue that they're working on can be pretty stressful and might prevent people from wanting to contribute. So trying to find a balance there that works. So happy to take suggestions if people think there's a better way to do that still sort of upholds the values. Otherwise, did anyone out of all of these things that we covered, did either of you want to discuss any of these in more detail while we're synchronous, particularly you, Gigi, because you don't get as much of a chance to be synchronous given your time zone?
No, I don't think so.
Cool.
Yeah, I personally don't think much about what you just said about wording because it's public or everything. I just don't think about it. I think at the beginning when I started working, I was like, oh, now it's everything is public. What do I say on this issue, right? But now I just don't care anymore and don't think about it. I don't know, nothing bad's gonna happen. I just say what I need to say and that's fine.
Yeah, I agree. I had the same experience. I feel where
just working,
the first week or two it was like, oh, these videos are on YouTube. And now,
well, this one is.
Yeah.
And it's totally live.
It's no big deal. And yeah, I think generally if I ever am not transparent or public with something, I probably just don't even realize that I'm doing. It's more of a,
Yeah, for me, it's sort of liberating. It's not having to maintain, this, public version of a thing and a private version of a thing. So that to me is actually really, really liberating, because it means you're not going, oh, what am I supposed to say in this scenario? You just say what it is, right? Now, we do have some limitations, obviously, around, private information and particular customers or whatever. But I think in this case, it is one of the things that I have to be very careful about, is just as a manager, making sure people feel comfortable and safe in saying things. So it may be true for us that we feel comfortable saying all that stuff out in public. I sure do as well. I totally feel that personally. But it's one of those things that's really hard to ask someone, right? Do you feel comfortable sharing this in public? And it's like, it's really kind of like,
I'm not comfortable answering that.
Right. And so so that's kind of why that is where it is.
Yeah.
And I don't mind if we all sort of agreed on making those discussions public after we'd finished or something of that nature, but then you still get sort of team pressure if most people agree and one person doesn't, that type of thing. So I think it's just sort of, the intent there is just to give people some sort of safety level in terms of how they give feedback on what we're doing as a team. It's already sometimes stressful enough for people to do that in front of their manager. I'm not saying that's true for us necessarily, but that's the intent. And for people watching this video after the fact, I'm happy to get feedback on that if people are think that's a bad idea, or it's taking a little bit too far away from our transparency value. But just recognize everything else we do is totally transparent, notably these meetings. So that's all I have. Anything else either of you want to bring up?
Nope.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Lovely to see your face, Gigi. I'm glad these meetings worked out for you. And thank you everyone for the good conversation, and have a good one.
Cool. See you guys.